Member, I appreciate the opportunity to be before you and share how an investment in infrastructure will benefit the people and economy of our country and the context of my district. Washington's 7th District is growing very rapidly. We're booming with innovation, people, and industry, which is wonderful. But the downside of that success is that our region must address increasing traffic, the decreasing affordability of housing, and the growing effects of climate change. In my district, residents have several times voted to tax themselves to create a regional mass transit system that is helping to ameliorate traffic and allowing working people to live farther afield from where housing is more affordable. The federal government, this is my hope for the committee, that the federal government match that commitment to mass rapid transit systems for our rapidly growing urban cities. I strongly believe that this is an important piece of what our transportation infrastructure package should include. I also come to you with 3 specific additional elements that I hope will be included in the infrastructure bill. First, it is time to reform the harbor maintenance tax, or the HMT. The HMT is the single largest source of federal funding for coastal ports and waterways, but unfortunately it's just not working as it should. By fixing the HMT, we can drive additional investment to our coastal ports without any new taxes. I applaud the committee's focus on making sure that annual HMT revenues are fully spent, putting the trust back into the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. Shippers pay the HMT when they use the ports, and the tax is intended to support infrastructure at ports, and this investment is critically needed. Fully using the tax is a no-brainer. However, if we only address full use without solving other ports' concerns, we would be leaving some behind. There is broad agreement among policymakers and the ports that they represent that a change in the distribution of the HMT funds will drive additional investment to our coastal ports without any additional new taxes. As an example of the current inequity, the 6 donor ports that are identified in the 2014 WRDA bill generated 53% of HMT collections in 2017, but received only 3% in return. That means that the Port of Seattle and Tacoma receive only pennies for every HMT dollar generated, some years even less than a penny. Not only is that distribution unfair, but the added cost of the HMT also contributes to the loss of cargo from the Puget Sound ports to nearby ports in Canada, a phenomenon that the Federal Marine Commission has validated. Congress should pass comprehensive HMT reform legislation that resolves the wide range of concerns that the nation's ports have about the harbor maintenance tax. Second, we must direct more federal funding to the needs of our smaller communities. In my district, Seattle is booming, but so are the cities that surround Seattle. While the U.S. DOT is now setting aside 50% of build grants for rural areas, this leaves small cities like Burien, Normandy Park, and Edmonds behind. For instance, the cities of Shoreline and Lake Forest Park are currently working on the redevelopment of 145th Street, a thoroughfare that will be a major conveyor of bus, bike, and pedestrian traffic to and from Interstate 5 and Sound Transit's light rail system. But making this road accessible to heavier and multimodal traffic requires investment. And the tax bases in these communities, by the way, that have already voted to tax themselves to support regional light rail, is simply not large enough for investments of this size. The federal government's dollars would be well repaid as these thriving communities contribute to our economy. Third, it's time for the federal government to invest in green infrastructure. Green infrastructure not only addresses the impacts of climate change, but works with nature and reduces the use of fuels and resources that contribute to climate change. Research suggests that the Washington 7th District, and indeed the entire Pacific Northwest, will see more intense rain events in the coming years. At the same time, we are rife in our state with outdated culverts that neither adequately move stormwater nor allow the passage of fish. A successful infrastructure bill will make much-needed improvements to those roads, bridges, energy grid, and water systems, and take into account what we know about climate and nature. In closing, I commend the chairman and this committee for taking up the cause of infrastructure, and I offer parting thoughts in the context of the FAST Act. Our highway system alone has suffered greatly since we stopped raising the gas tax. Extremely efficient and cost-effective to collect. So to that end of an alternative, The Washington State Transportation Commission has been researching and assessing a road usage charge, or RUC system, since 2011. Creates equity as it's assessed on miles driven, regardless of fuel source or efficiency. I hope that we can consider the RUC in this committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to testify.